My mindset is always, but where does this job take you in the job after the job?
Are you talking to as many current employees, active job seekers, as much as you are talking to unemployed, active job seekers as well? Is it like 50-50?
4 decades. Yes, I'm great. 4 decades I've been operating in the hiring, staffing, recruitment, and executive search industries. I'm really proud when somebody has a great job, they're in the next journey of their career. That's the name Numi. Numi represents the creation of a new me.
Is the average recruitment process today above 2 or 3 months?
We're currently in this state where we have an imbalance in supply and demand. Any candidate that has got AI in their CV somewhere or other, again, they're really highly demanded. Are the employers paying one salary for 2 people?
What advice do you usually give to those candidates in order to increase their conversion rate, get more interviews, get more in front of people and stand out?
Be very rigorous and process-oriented about how you're conducting your job search, because on the one hand, you need to be really fast and you need to be really reactive and you see a job and apply for it. But on the other hand, you can't let it consume you.
Building your career as a startup or building your career as a product and thinking about like the different stages, discovery and execution, etc.
Always hope, Ahmed. Tomorrow is a new day and it is cyclical. We had experiences in 2008, 2009, where it was a very bad time for job seekers. And we've been in a cycle in 2023 and 24. So yes, there is always hope. And of course you will find a job.
Recruitment is a game of influence in a lot of aspects.
You want to show that you're engaged. You want to show that you're in the ecosystem and that you have a voice. That doesn't mean you have to write blogs. Simply commenting on other blogs is almost as powerful. But a really great hack for that is simply find 10 influencers in your world and comment on the things that they write. And that also boosts a LinkedIn algorithm. It is network, right? That's the most important and the most impactful way that you will help yourself to find a new job. Those are the calls that probably make the most difference in your job search.
Hello. Hi, Mark. It's a pleasure having you with me today.
Hi. Hello, Ahmed. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining and participating in such a timely and sensitive topic. Everyone is talking about it. And you have been in the recruitment industry for quite a while now, probably 15, 20 years. I would love to hear a bit from you about that as well. So I'm sure you would have a unique perspective and angle, very grounded as well angle. You are actively working as a recruiter, talent partner for many companies as part of your venture. So I'm sure your advice would be greatly appreciated and resonating with a lot of what's happening today. There is a new ritual which we are like doing now with our episode, where we start with a few rapid fire questions. You can just say yes, no, or maybe. Just try to say a few words as much as possible, and then we can get into the meat of the topic today. So the first question is, are today's companies still suffer from talent shortage?
Yes and no. Depends on the high density, depends on the quality of it.
Perfect. We'll cover this more. Do we have more unemployed candidates than jobs in the market?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Is the average recruitment process today above 2 or 3 months?
Wow. It depends on the type of job function that's been hired for, to give you a bit more clarity on that, and also the level as well. If it's a very senior C-suite appointment, yes, more than 2 to 3 months. If it's a highly deeply technical or product-led appointment, potentially. If it's something more straightforward in marketing or customer services, a lot faster.
Thanks a lot for the elaboration. Do you think companies are doing enough to address bias in tech recruitment?
In general, no. Some of the more modern tech companies are. Depends which location. But in general, no. Companies can be doing a lot more.
Perfect. And last question. Imagine I'm a job seeker at the moment. I've been actively looking for jobs for the past 12 months. Before that, I've been employed by one of the big tech companies for the past 15 years. Let's imagine I was working as an engineer or within the technology department. It has been very difficult for me. Do you think there is hope of me finding a job in this today's insane job market, or should I give up and switch to a different industry altogether?
There is always hope, Ahmed. Tomorrow is a new day, and it is cyclical. We had experiences in 2008, 2009, where it was a very bad time for job seekers. And we've been in a cycle in 2023 and 24, and it's been a bad experience for job seekers. All things are pointing toward 2025 and beyond getting better again. So yes, there is always hope. And of course you will find a job.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing this message as well. So let's dig deeper into the topic. But before that, I would love to know more about your experience and background. You have been in the tech industry for quite some time now. You have done sales and commercial roles. You have worked as a talent partner in many companies. And now you are also like the co-founder of Numi. So I'd love to know more about your background and also tell us more about Numi, what you are doing, what regions are you focusing on, and we can take it from there.
I will give you a shortish introduction. I am currently co-founder of Numi and Numi Search Ventures. Those businesses are the culmination of 4 decades. Yes, I'm grey. 4 decades I've been operating in the hiring, staffing, recruitment, and executive search industries. In the late 90s, I was solving problems such as the year 2K millennium bug, which moved into the dot-com era, which has effectively now gone through agile ways of working, and that transformation from waterfall software engineering to lean agile startups into these modern practices of startups, scale-ups, and unicorns. So many years of operating in the recruitment and search industry. Our company has been trading 3 years, and Numi is obsessed with raising the bar when it comes to recruitment. Recruitment has some challenges in the way, in general, that it operates. So we're more exclusive. The way that we operate is in a partnership capacity. We build teams and we find jobs for people. The profile of those people and those companies are those modern, leading edge companies that are solving really hard problems, quite often where there is impact that has some sort of nobility in it, because that makes us smile a lot. Life's short and it's nice to do work that you feel proud of. But fundamentally, we feel really happy and really proud when somebody has a great job, they're in the next journey of their career. That's the name Numi. Numi represents the creation of a new me. So it's everybody's journey, everybody's chapter in their career. You see, you loved that, didn't you?
I didn't notice that before. It was just a name for me. I thought this is just a name, New Me. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a new me. Geographically, we are global. We're small but mighty. My co-founder Ricky relocated to Dubai earlier this year. We've spent the last couple of years building our network and our reputation within the VC industries and communities and the founder forums. And so we're pretty strong in MENA and we're pretty strong in the UK and Europe, with an extended reach and a future lens on the USA. That's my intro.
And would you say, in order to reflect on today's job market and what has changed, can you share some of the things that you changed in Numi over the past 2 or 3 years? So has there anything changed internally in terms of your processes, the number of jobs you focus on at a time, or whether you focus on senior or junior roles? Tell me more about how Numi reacted with today's job market, and we can take it from there as well in terms of describing what is today's job market.
Sure. I am a second-time founder. This time around, we began trading as Numi, and we had 3 core propositions. One was our executive search business. One was our embedded talent, our hybrid talent-only model. And then the other model that we had was hiring individual contributors on what's known in the industry as classic contingent recruitment, but obviously raising the bar and doing that really well. For the first 2 years, we had a wait list. We were lucky, I think. We were in the right place at the right time. We were 2021 and 2022. And so we had numerous embedded projects where we were retained by a customer to operate as their internal talent function, to not only identify and select and onboard all of the staff and hires into those organizations, but we were also working with the founders and with the C-suite executives to design their interview processes, to implement their technologies, their applicant tracking systems, to interview and raise the bar with their hiring community and coach their managers on how to interview. And we were designing those processes. So we were working inside companies, we no longer provide that service, the hybrid embedded model, in that capacity. And the reason for that is that we found that, like I said a moment ago, we're small but mighty. And those projects are 100% 24/7, all encompassing. And actually, we realized during those experiences that the elements of people and culture and providing those kind of services in those areas, we were stepping up, we were learning, we were developing our own experiences. And that's great, but we kind of felt like we were learning on the job, and that's not fair. And we think there are other businesses that provide those services better than us. So we retrenched, we doubled down on what we're really great at, and that is the partnership experience and finding hard to find candidates and making those appointments for our customers. So now our proposition is an executive search business and a recruitment company that build teams in a partnership model. So that's how we kind of pivoted and changed. In terms of the technologies, we were built like a startup from our inception. We formed the company in the lockdown during the pandemic. We were locked up in our houses. And so I feel grateful for that experience because as we designed the business, we were remote by nature, which meant that we chose some really great tools. So we have Miro, we have Notion, we have Slack, we have all of these modern tools that technology companies have that frankly recruitment businesses don't have. And I know this is still true because as we're interviewing potential people to work in our company, they are really, their eyes are very wide open with the technologies that we use to make our boat go faster. So we haven't really changed our technologies too much. We've adopted, we've refined, we're more efficient, we're better at using those tools. But I think we made a good stab at the beginning.
Okay. So you haven't maximized the use of AI in screening candidates and even interviewing candidates, like the new trends of using AI everywhere hasn't touched your base yet?
Well, I think we'll get onto AI a little bit more a bit later on. We did get very curious, and I'm still very curious. Maybe we're not your classic early adopters, and maybe there is too much in the life cycle of a recruitment process to try and unpick and figure out where would you apply AI to really add maximum value. And that might be in building the top of the funnel, or it might be in executing the shortlist, it might be in some of our internal processes. I mean, some of the more obvious basic Gen AI, we're using ChatGPT and Claude for some of the content curation. But we're just pausing a little bit to see fundamentally what is actually going to change and make a real difference versus just, a sticking plaster over the top of writing some content like the Gen AI products.
Makes a lot of sense, and definitely we'll get deeper into that. You have seen the peak of recruitment maybe at the beginning of the pandemic or the first half of the pandemic. And also you have witnessed how this has gone down dramatically towards the end of the pandemic and post 2022. Why do you believe today's job market is different than 2022? Or maybe even do you believe today's job market is different? Are there different characteristics about today's job market that people should be aware of and should react towards it?
It is different. We're currently in this state where we have an imbalance in supply and demand, which I referred to a moment ago. We have more candidates than there are job opportunities. So that's number one. And that creates a myriad of problems, both as a job seeker, but also as a hiring manager. Some other points to bolt into this are the nature of the way that we work. Before the pandemic, maybe, through the late teens, some of the more modern technology companies had already embraced work from home practices, but it wasn't common, it wasn't normal, and we certainly weren't forced to do that. And that conversation about working in an office, working remotely, now going back to in an office is still raging. There are benefits and there are drawbacks. Functionally as well, as a software engineer, to be able to do some deep work without being distracted in an office is different to maybe a product manager that needs to workshop, get people together in real life in front of a whiteboard. So that conversation, the work from home, hybrid, remote, is still raging, and that's very different now post-pandemic. And I think that will continue to level out and play forward as well over the coming years. The marketplace for how you find a job as well, or how you hire a person, is also continuing to evolve. You can see from our experiences, we no longer offer the hybrid embedded talent solution. There's a whole industry now where there are businesses that offer that solution, and that's the only thing they do. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as an internal talent acquisition function. When I joined, you had a personnel department with filing cabinets and fax machines that did all of the recruitment. There was advertising in media. Now you have a culture department, you have a people department, you have a talent function. None of those things existed. In addition, you've now got different types of recruitment companies that you can work with as well. Some are very niche, some are very generalist. So there's a lot of fragmentation. Then you bolt into all of the tools and technologies and direct hiring platforms. So that's changing. I also would say as well that from a job seeker's perspective, I heard a really interesting survey last year that was conducted by Amazon on more than 60,000 engineers. And they asked a question: what are your number 4 drivers when thinking about your new job opportunity? The first answer was mission. The second answer was culture, people and the team they're working with. The third answer was computational power, as in the complexity of the problem they're solving. And the fourth answer was the cash component. And it's flipped around because it used to be the cash component first and the computational power and then the mission and the culture, right? But now it's all about, mental headspace, working with people, solving hard problems, what the company's doing. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to get some great salary. So that's changing. There's an ED&I and diversity lens as well, which plays out now, which 10 years ago, I don't think it did. Regionally, it's very different in MENA and the Gulf region versus the UK and Europe and the States. So that's also playing out. So yeah, there's a few things in answer to your question. Is it different now post-pandemic than it was before the pandemic? Yes, of course. I think things change and they will always continue to change.
Okay. And I guess we always try to focus more on the job seeker side than this episode, just because of not just the number imbalance, the power imbalance in today's world. Those are I wouldn't say the weak link, but they are like weaker compared to the other side, at least in today's market, given what you said as well about the imbalance between like supply and demand. But let's first cover the company side. Like, what are some of the top challenges you hear from companies when they are hiring now? And let's focus on mid to senior role. Is it because they are getting loads of application and they don't have the manpower to screen, to interview? Is it because like priorities shift a lot? Is investment drying up and they are hesitant to make a decision and they keep going back and forth whether they need a head of product, whether they need an engineering manager, or can they delay this? Tell me more about what companies are thinking and discussing with you when they recruit you as an external recruiter for their roles.
First off, that supply and demand. The way I think about that is there are too many candidates. Some of the problems that causes includes somebody cannot see the wood for the trees, I think is the phrase, where it takes so long to filter through all of the applicants that you're receiving, and you spend so many hours performing that task that creates too many blockers in all of the other tasks that you need to do in your normal job. So if you're a hiring manager and you get 1,000 applicants versus previously you wouldn't have had that many applicants, you have too much work to do. Secondly, because you have too much work to do and you don't have enough time to filter through those applicants, you start to make bad decisions on those applicants. I think in the future, maybe AI can solve some of that, but that also is only addressing responding to people applying to work at your company. And so that misses out a whole category of people that are probably the best people who are kind of unhappy in their job and they're waiting for you to approach them, to headhunt them and to call them with an opportunity. So even though there's too many applicants, you're actually not finding potentially the best applicant. You're just really only sourcing through the only applicants you see versus going to find the ones you actually want. I think that's the problem.
You mean headhunting is a bit of on a pause now by companies in most cases? They are just buried in like many hundreds, if not thousands of application of unemployed people or active job seeker, and they are not looking thorough enough about like who is the best candidate for this job, whether he's employed or not, active or not.
Let me give you another frame, right? So you're the very best candidate. Why would you look for a job today? Because today the salaries, regardless of what I said about purpose, mission, and But nevertheless, if you're the very best candidate, you would not choose to look for a job today because you know that the job market is not great.
Yep.
You know there's going to be like all of this fierce competition. You know that the salaries have been reduced for the last 12 months and they haven't started to increase again. So you wouldn't necessarily look for a job. So all of this imbalance in supply and demand is really restricting the very best people from popping up and asking for a new job. There's also a little bit of fatigue as well. A lot of people changed jobs in 2020 and 2021 because of the way their companies treated them, because of the move from work from home. A lot of people have been made redundant or laid off once or twice before. So there's this real nervousness from a candidate perspective about changing jobs unless I really have to. So, all of that compounds into the best candidates are not necessarily looking. Now, notwithstanding, the best candidates are always the ones in demand. And that creates a problem for the hiring companies that are sat there really happily thinking, well, I've got loads of candidates, I've got loads of choice, I've got all of the power, I can take my time. The best candidates don't wait for you. The best candidates are still going to get 3-4 offers within a couple of weeks because they're hot property. Pace at which the companies are moving through the gates to make those hires. And in that mix, they've got this superstar. They'll kind of miss on that superstar because they just got too many other candidates to think about. So you have that. I think you mentioned something about the investment. So if these companies are backed by equity or venture capital, I think there's more pressure. I think there's more due diligence on spending money, and the knock-on effect of that is making mistakes with the people in your business and hiring people in your business, which is a very expensive resource. People cost, salaries are high. So I think that there's added pressure in due diligence for making a hire in the first place and then who you hire. And that creates nervousness. Part of a knock-on effect of that is the way that the job functions are changing a little bit. You're starting to see roles blend into one. You're starting to see, you're not starting now to see full stack software engineering, but you're definitely starting to see more hands-on VP of engineering that really is a combination of what used to be 2 jobs. Or you're starting to see a CPTO, which kind of is a combination of 2 jobs. Are the employers paying one salary for 2 people? Why is that? I don't know. And then I think probably the other thing you mentioned about AI, right? Everybody's on this bandwagon to do something with AI, to be seen as doing something with AI. A lot of it is creating internal efficiencies, trying to think, how can we make 30-40% optimizing efficiencies with AI versus what is it actually doing for our customer? So what that means is any candidate that has got AI in their CV somewhere or other, again, they're really highly demanded. And there's a real talent shortage in those. So, if you're an employer, if you're a hiring manager trying to seek that talent, you have this like limited pool of candidates, again, drowned out by all the rest.
Honestly, I can feel for companies as well. And let's always remember that those companies, there are people behind those companies. So we're talking about people having those challenges as well. As much as the job seekers would be challenged by today's uncertainty and lack of or shortage of investment money, or the fact that they want to de-risk their decisions when it comes to hiring this person, especially the more they go up the ladder in terms of seniority. So there is definitely justification for that. And I think from the other side, from the companies, it's just very hard to react quickly and know how to adjust their job seeking activities in order to increase their odds of them getting a job within 6 months and not within a year. So as much as you are talking to companies, I know you are talking to candidates as well. And we got introduced through one of these encounters. And I like your approach when it comes to building relationship and going beyond the surface. It's not just a typical screening call. You go really beneath the surface when it comes to knowing your candidates and who could be your future candidate for the jobs that you are hiring for. Tell me more about the struggle from the candidate side. What are the top themes that you are hearing from candidates, and are you talking to as many current employees, active job seekers, as much as you are talking to unemployed active job seekers as well? Is it like 50-50, or you are seeing more unemployed active than employed active?
Well, I mean, that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about it like that. I'll tell you, and that's very nice of you to say. We do try to dive a little bit deeper and get under the skin and really understand a person's motivations and drivers and get to know them for the long term. It's a small world, and I know I personally definitely believe in karma and doing the right thing and looking after people. From a candidate's perspective, are we talking to more unemployed candidates versus employed candidates? I don't know the number, but what I will tell you is there are too many candidates to speak to. And so I've learned how to say no, which was a hard lesson, I'd say middle of last year, because I've always wanted to put calls in to people to look after them. And there just simply were not enough hours in the day. So I learned a hard lesson to say no, that the job flow is really light. I'd love to speak to you. I'd love to help you, to give you some advice in terms of how you're positioning yourself, your personal brand, what you can be doing to help secure a job. But with the best will in the world, I can't have a 15-minute call with every single person that's looking. There's just not enough time. Yeah, that's one part of it. Your other question is, how do we help candidates to find a job, or is it what should candidates be doing to find a job?
Maybe we can start first by like what are the problems or the themes of problem that you hear from candidates? Do they usually tell you we are applying, there is no response, or we get to an offer stage but offer retracted, or there is no enough jobs so I can't apply enough? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges that candidates are facing today? And maybe, yeah, definitely the next step would be like, what advice do you usually give to those candidates in order to increase their conversion rate, get more interviews, get more in front of people, and stand out in today's crowded market?
Yeah, some of the problems they're facing are obviously that there is high competition if they're applying for jobs. Let me just redress it a little bit. A product manager's number one skill set is probably communication. Notwithstanding, whilst seeking a job, it requires a different set of skills. And part of those skills are networking and effectively business development. You need to sell yourself. A lot of people are uncomfortable with that. I mean, even now, a lot of people are still uncomfortable with sending video notes on WhatsApp. They don't like the sound of their voice. They don't like the way they look on video. I mean, that's still a thing, right? Even if we're in this modern technology area and we've been forced to use Zoom and a Hangout. So selling yourself isn't something that a lot of people are very comfortable with. And it's also, frankly, not what you're paid to do. So you don't learn those skills. A lot of people don't learn public speaking skills. A lot of people don't stand up and go to networking events and are comfortable with walking up to a stranger and knowing how to just have a conversation with a complete random stranger. So some of those skills are being learned whilst on the job effectively, if the job is looking for a job. So that's one part of it. The competition is another part of it. And then secondly, you have job offers that are not paying as much as they used to pay, and people are wrestling in their minds about whether they would want to apply for that job. Are they forced to apply for that job? Should I wait? Should I wait it out? But then how long am I waiting? You then have candidates that have been out of work for a while, and they become like obsessed with their phone, like, because they're waiting for those messages. And that's emotionally and mentally, that's a terrible place to be. So I would always recommend to those candidates to be very rigorous and process oriented about how you're conducting your job search. Because on the one hand, you need to be really fast and you need to be really reactive, and you see a job and apply for it. But on the other hand, you can't let it consume you. Like, you just need to take a breath and just relax, be organized.
It's very interesting, the point that you raised about the interpersonal and the skills, the social skills that people are kind of forced to learn today. One might think that these should be the average skills that one would have anyways to be hireable or to get into an interviewing process. Recruitment is a game of influence in a lot of aspects. Maybe before there was less talent than jobs, so people were relaxed and they weren't challenged enough to push the boundaries when it comes to like talking to people, networking, selling themselves, doing the business development activities that would get them in front of many companies. But I think today is because of this imbalance, people are forced to learn these skills, and those who are not doing it, they suffer the most because there is no way around it. There is no way you get as many jobs as you used to have before anyways. let alone without seeking referrals, without asking some of your friends and companies to make intros, without going to events, networking online. That's definitely one side that I think people should be aware of.
You started when you asked me to consider senior and middle management as well in terms of the demographic. So heads of or VPs. So not an individual contributor in their early part of their career and not a very senior C-suite member. You think about that profile of person, first-time managers, head of product, head of engineering, where they have 1, 2, 3 squads or something like that, and they haven't been a people manager for a very long time. Those layers are some of the layers that have been cut by these companies because it's very easy to get rid of middle management who are a cost, right? And so there've been some people that are really now thinking, well, do I go back to being an IC? This hobbyist code project that has turned into a side hustle. Actually, that's reminded me of my love for engineering. I might go back and be an engineer again. And then struggle to then position themselves as a hands-on individual contributor because they haven't been doing that in their employment. Equally, you have the same kind of issue in a slightly different way in terms of product management, and that is that there's been a debate raging about the commercialization of product management versus the innovation and technological solutions that the companies and therefore the product managers are building. And this has been driven by Brian Chesky and Eric Ries and Marty Kay. In the late 90s, businesses were run by salespeople and marketing people until Zuckerberg and Elon and co start building these technology companies, and they're from an engineering perspective. And I think somewhere along the way, we forgot that we were making stuff that people would buy, and we started just making stuff. And now we've been reminded that we've got to make stuff that people will buy, which means that you have to give value back to your shareholders and give value back to your customers. You have to make money. So this shift from technology to commercialization is really affecting the product management community too. And those heads of product and middle management product people are also starting to think, well, how do I represent myself in that regard? So those are some of the things I think have challenged those people. I also think there is something in the style of leadership as well, which is also evolving, because it was a bit like, the horse and cart many years ago. And now it's more like servant leadership and emotional intelligence. And I see how these American companies let their people be empowered and autonomous. And, it's not the way it's always been. And some people are naturally very empathetic and they're naturally very people. And other times people are practitioners that have become a people or a line manager, but it's not the thing they love. What they really love is strategic leadership and, where we're going. So I think that's also been a problem in those middle management layers.
And in terms of let's call it the sacrifice that candidates need to make in today's world in order to make sure that they pass the stage of being unemployed for 12 months, do you think, should we tell people that they should be comfortable discounting this? Should they be comfortable taking a 10%, 15% cut, or should they be more comfortable moving to an IC role from a management role? Are these like realities forcing them to make these hard choices? Or usually when a candidate reach out to you for advice, you tell them, stand still. If you're not happy, keep focusing on what you want, keep focusing on what you used to have a year ago, and you will get it. It's just like it will take more time. What should we tell people?
Well, obviously you can't.
It's a hard question.
Yeah. I can't give a blanket approach to what personal motivators each individual has for obvious reasons. But what I would say to that person is during these days, weeks, and months where you're in a position where you're thinking about your career, be thinking about a 2-year horizon. And that might be even when you're applying for a job. My mindset is always, well, where does this job take you in the job after the job? And that helps you to give a perspective of, like, if I was interviewing for a job today, I'd be thinking, where am I going to be in 2026 or 2027 if I take this job?
Yep.
What skills will I learn on that journey? So if that's not in an interview regard or in a current employment regard, it would be, what can I be doing now to upskill myself? Would that be a public speaking course, or would it be a machine learning course to learn something, technological? Would it be a course to do with business and commercialization. Or if I were in employment, I would be thinking, which cross-functional leaders can I spend more time with? Could I go and be with the marketeers? Could I go and be with the sales folks? Could I be with the finance and the ops people? How can I upskill myself during these times? I would definitely be thinking like that. Versus, I know I'm not directly answering your question of, should I just take a job for a 10 or 15% cut? I'd be thinking the other way. I'd be thinking, how can I get that job? Even though it's really hard, how can I stand out? And so definitely spend some time upskilling yourself. Probably the overriding thing is to network, network, network. It is network, right? That's the most important and the most impactful way that you will help yourself to find a new job and to have a more flourishing career. The stronger your first connections are, the stronger your networked connections are, the more chance you've got of having a successful career in technology. And so I would think about building effectively a cross-functional feature team for your own job, for your own career. And it's a really great way to be different, right? Because if you're a product person, you think, right, 0 to what do I need to do? So I'll think about the business plan. I'll do some user research. I'll do some discovery. You go all the way through to execution, right? In those early moments, you think about who are the key stakeholders. So in a job seeking perspective, this is, can I find a coach? Can I find a non-exec? Can I find some old bosses that I've worked with? Can I find some directors? Can I have some coaching sessions with those? Can they be my mental rocks and my support group? And can they also give me their tips and advice? And can they extend me into their network of all of the companies that they've worked in? Are there some groups and some communities where you've got shared common interests, which I know there are, but make sure you join those groups and those communities. So definitely networking and pulling in the support of those around you, which extends your personal network, is a really great strategy to employ for these people that are interested in a new job opportunity.
Yeah, the way I think about it, I used to always think of one's career as a journey of a startup, or like building your career as a startup, or building your career as a product, and thinking about like the different stages, discovery and execution, etc. I think probably a few years back, I was always thinking about the career capital, like what is your past experience, what's your achievements, what have you built in the past that would give the reason for this new company to potentially even have a conversation with you. I think another thing which you cover today is very important is the network capital. It's like, whom do you know, and how do they think of you? I think this is extremely important. We have always been giving advice to ourselves and to people around us to network in order to get more jobs in the pipeline. But I think if you're not doing it now, your chance of getting a job is very, very minimal. You need to get out and talk to people, and hopefully with what you have built in the past, they would think positively of you as well. Because obviously, if you talk to as many people as you can, but your reputation has been damaged for whatever reason, or you haven't been giving back to these people in the past, they wouldn't be willing to help you as well in the current time. Would you be able to recall a story of a candidate which you think could be inspiring for people? Maybe if you have a candidate that you know has been struggling for so long, like maybe 6+ months, have been always applying here and there, applying and taking these advice, but it has been a bit of a struggle till he or she managed to land their dream job. And maybe if you have this story in mind, like, what do you believe were the secret sauce of their success? I want to give people like a real example of someone whom they can look up to and potentially even do the same in order to land more jobs or get into more interviewing process. Is there any story in your head?
Yeah, I won't name names because I think that would be unfair. But I can think of a lady who was a middle management head of product level. The company that they were working for lost funding, went bankrupt, and so they were all out of work. And this lady had moved away from London down to the country. They were renovating their house, family, children. This happened I think it was about Easter last year. So before the summer in 2023. And they decided that they didn't want to get into the heat of the scramble of all of these people that were being laid off and looking for a job. And so they took the summer off, decided that they were going to start looking for work in September last year. And things were worse in September last year. And they were one of the few people that had been employed by that company that still hadn't found a job. And obviously they went out to market, wanted to have a completely remote job on the same salary that they were on, with the same kind of like people management responsibilities. And they quickly found over September, October, and November that they were just having no, no, and no. So they then started to think, okay, do I now want to work in London 3 days a week? Would I now take this individual contributor job? Do I still want to be a manager? They rewrote their CV. And actually at a moment, they decided to think very, very differently. So they rebuilt their social media presence, started a blog, joined some communities, and in those communities started hosting job seeker support sessions. And what that meant is that they were learning all of the tricks and techniques of the other job seekers. They were also feeling good as a human being about that. Their brand was becoming more and more noticed, and they were then being referred to other companies and other people because they were a good egg, like a good ambassador for how to help others in the job seeking marketplace. And then as it turns out, one of those referrals ended up being the boss of a boss that they'd previously worked with, and they now have their dream job and they're very happy. So it took them a long time, and they were kind of kicking themselves at the start for taking some time out to breathe. But upon reflection, I said this to them, that actually, after a really intense ride with a startup that's blitz scale, that's 100 miles an hour, you do need some time. So probably what they did was they set an expectation that it's going to take X amount of times to get a job, X amount of months to get a job, and they set the wrong expectation. They probably should have just extended that, and then they wouldn't have gone through that 3-4 month real worry period. So yeah, there's one example for you. Hope that.
Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing this. What an inspiring story, and I think with lots of like tactical bits that people should take home as an exercise as well. And I think the gist of it is like you need to give before you ask for something in return. And I think this is the positive karma here. Like they have been helping out community, and in the meantime as well, they were building their profile. They are learning through the process. I think I like to think of interviewing, and obviously without the pressure of the hardship of life anyways, and the cost of inflation and all these kind of things, but interviewing is a learning experience in itself. You learn about yourself, you learn about like your motivation, what you need and what you can do. And I think through their pursuit of helping others, they have found people who are willing to help them as well. And they found like more interests and opportunities. So I think everyone, should go today and think, what can I do to other people around me that could be of value? What do I have now in terms of skills, knowledge, resources? What can I offer to the community? Every one of us who have been employed for a few years can offer something of value. It doesn't have to be the same that everyone is offering. Not all of us should like be on LinkedIn writing short posts here and there, or like doing whatever everyone is doing, but you could be helping just a few members of your community, of your neighborhood, of your friends in this country or others. And I'm sure by time they would help back in some way or another.
It can be quite a daunting and overwhelming thought. And again, back to that point of the uncomfortability of putting yourself out there. So a lot of people are not naturally confident when it comes to content, but you don't need to write blogs. It's awesome if you can, and if you're willing to do that. But a really great hack for that is simply find 10 influencers in your world and comment on the things that they write. And that also boosts the LinkedIn algorithm. So, just all you really want to do on social media is you want to show your personality. You want to show that you're engaged. You want to show that you're in the ecosystem and that you have a voice. That doesn't mean you have to write blogs. Simply commenting on other blogs is almost as powerful. It would be, one little nugget. And another one I would say is the recruiter screenings are so valuable, and you don't necessarily understand, and they might feel repetitive. But the fact is, in a 15, 20-minute recruiter screening, if you don't prepare for that in the same regard as you would prepare for a case study, you blow your chances of getting in front of the customer in the first place. You blow your chances of getting the job that they didn't have today but will have tomorrow. Because if the recruiter says, "Hi, tell me about yourself," and you just meander on some uninteresting waffle without metrics, without evidence, without backing up your story, if they ask you what you're looking for and you're not clear on that, if they ask you what your skills are and you don't really give, again, great answers, then they kind of discount you as a candidate. And you, in your mind, think that was just another boring recruiter screening. But in reality, those are the calls that probably make the most difference in your job search.
Every bit counts in this journey. Mark, like I really enjoyed this conversation. And before I leave you, I have only one last question before I leave you to continue helping more candidates get into jobs with amazing companies in your network. So I've been hearing a lot of stories from job seekers on this episode and also from friends in my network. Some of it is close to terrifying about like how they are dealt with when applying to jobs, from receiving no responses to being ghosted even in some calls to going through lengthy process over 3 months or more, or like submitting hours of tasks and not receiving any feedback. And I know, being an entrepreneur myself in the past and hiring for many of my roles, that recruitment is a game of branding for companies as well. And I know you care a lot about this when it comes to giving advice to your clients. What advice would you give to companies today in order to make sure, as much as they want to be efficient and run a viable business, they stay as close to being candidate-centric as possible and create a fair game for everyone applying to their jobs? Can you share some of your advice and tips that we can leave companies with at the end of this episode?
Be human beings, firstly. Common courtesy doesn't cost a thing. Technology can automate some of the processes that we have. It's very difficult when you're at the beginning, at the top of the funnel, and you have hundreds or thousands of candidates. So, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to get an auto reject, and you just can't help that. But beyond that, once you've engaged with a person, they are a person. So if I go to the end story, right, here's an advice for a customer that's trying to make an appointment. Once you've gone through your scorecard and you've made a decision to hire, really got to think of yourself as rolling out a concierge experience or a VIP experience to that candidate. A really nice thing to do would be, say there's 4 people in the interview panel. As soon as you've made the decision to make an offer, each one of those 4 people personally sends that candidate a message. The person responsible for making the hire consolidates all of the pieces of feedback about why the candidate is the great candidate they're going to choose, how it will help them with their career, write it all up and put it in the offer letter with a video message too. Make it really personal. That will help you to land the candidate. So I think that's a nice way to recommend companies to get the person that they've gone through the whole process of trying to hire. The ghosting piece that you referred to is especially bad when it comes to candidates that have been interviewed or screened, or they've had some sort of interaction. And I just don't think it's acceptable. I think that, frankly, companies just need to be more organized. They need to use the right ATS, the right tools and the right systems to make sure that they're giving engaged feedback to those candidates. It's just not acceptable, is the bottom dollar of it. I think furthermore, some of the hiring managers should be aware that this does happen and it's unfair to people, because it might be them this time tomorrow. So, karma is a bitch. And I think that those hiring managers should make themselves available to give actual feedback to the candidates to help them in their job search next time around if they weren't successful. And even to allow a 10, 15-minute call afterwards just to give them that little bit of coaching. It doesn't take a lot, and it will make somebody's day, and it will help that person. And like I said, these things come around.
Let's hope more and more companies are listening and applying those wonderful nuggets. Mark, I can't thank you enough for being with me today and definitely sharing all those amazing tips and advice. And till we meet again, my friend.
And I thank you too. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.